First up is this Russia collusion scandal, which, despite what you hear from the media, is in collapse. And it's in collapse as it relates to the allegation that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to steal the 2016 elections. And you know, I went back and I looked at the special counsel order, or the order appointing the special counsel, signed by Rod Rosenstein, the #2 at the Department of Justice, who had made the decision due to, I think, General Sessions' mistaken belief that he needed to recuse himself. But nevertheless, Rosenstein made the decision to appoint Mueller. Comey, I guess that's a Freudian slip, after Comey made it impossible politically for them, or I don't know, politically impossible, but certainly made it difficult for them to get by with continuing the investigation thanks to leaks by James Comey, leaks that Comey admitted were designed to get the special counsel appointed. So this is what the appointment says. It's worth remembering. The special counsel is authorized to conduct the investigation confirmed by then FBI Director James Comey in testimony before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence on March 20th, 2017, including A, any links and/or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald Trump. And 2, it's not A or B, but it's 1 and 2, any matters that arose or may arise directly from the investigation. And 3, any other matters within the scope of 28 CFR 604A. I'm assuming that's false statements. So, look, Mueller was essentially hired to investigate whether there was any collusion between Trump and Russia. There's no evidence that took place. So you've heard indictments talked about, you've heard plea deals talked about, none of which have to do with collusion between the Russians and the Trump team. In fact, specifically last week, just after we put out our weekly update, they announced, Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, announced the filing of indictments against 13 Russians and I think 2 entities in Russia, alleging that they had spent money to try to influence our public policy process in our elections in 2014, 15, 16, and who knows, maybe even in 2017. Well, doesn't that tell you necessarily it had nothing to do with Trump? Indeed, Rosenstein confirmed in his statement, saying there was no evidence in that indictment showing that there was any witting participation by the Trump team or any other American with this Russia troll farm effort. And essentially what the Russians were doing was they were masking and disguising their participation by stealing identities or pretending to be Americans on Facebook and other social media, and trying to participate in organizing protests both for and against Donald Trump. So those indictments, despite all the noise you heard about it last week, have nothing to do with Donald Trump other than he happened to be the candidate at the time the Russians decided to start messing around with our public policy process. You know, the assumption is that everyone knew Trump was going to win in 2016. I don't think President Trump knew he was going to win. The betting money was on Hillary Clinton winning. That's why Trump's win was so astonishing, because he was the underdog. No one thought he was going to win, or few people did, certainly in the establishment. Now, did the Russians think he was going to win? I don't think so. They probably thought, like everyone else, Hillary Clinton was going to win. And if you look at their participation and their disruption as an attack on the ability of the Clinton administration to function, it makes a lot of sense. And of course, it further undermines the fake narrative that they were in it to help Donald Trump win. No, they were in it just to mess with us. And if it meant saying nice things about Donald Trump and then saying bad things about Donald Trump, that's what they did. But nevertheless, it had nothing to do with the Trump campaign. To the degree they communicated with someone, it was some volunteer who gave someone signs. It's absurd. In many ways, the indictment is warmed over material that had been out there for some time that's going to go nowhere, in the sense that it's an indictment of 13 foreign nationals in Russia, who the Russians are never going to give to us for trial. So we don't even know if that indictment will survive the scrutiny of a trial. or it will never be tested under the scrutiny of a trial. But again, Mueller's operation targeted this Russia interference effort and came up with zilch as it relates to Donald Trump. Why is it we need a special counsel to do this type of work? We don't. And it's about time that those who allege that there's evidence that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, they need to start producing the evidence other than the Clinton dossier, which is, to me, is still the kind of the key document behind the fake Russia story. The Russia, as I call it, the unicorn theory of the election, that Hillary Clinton had it stolen from her by Donald Trump after colluding with the Russians. Well, that's a Clinton campaign document that says that was laundered into the FBI and Justice Department to use as a pretext to spy on Donald Trump. And Robert Mueller's investigation has found zilch on that. Now, there's been a plea deal this week of a lawyer associated with Paul Manafort, President Trump's former campaign manager. Nothing to do with Donald Trump and the elections and the Russians. They refiled indictments against Manafort and I think Mr. Gates, who was his associate, another former Trump campaign aide. Nothing to do with Donald Trump. Mortgage fraud, bank fraud, tax fraud. And Mr. Gates, I think, just as we're going live here, said that he's pleading guilty, or he's going to plead guilty to some of these charges. Again, not having anything to do with Donald Trump. So if there's no evidence of Russia collusion, then why is it we need a special counsel? I'm not even sure what about the Russia collusion would necessarily be a crime. Don't you need some fair notice that a crime has been committed before you start appointing a prosecutor to go out and investigate someone? That's the way our system of justice works, but not when it comes to President Trump. I said it once and I'll say it before. No one's above the law, not the President of the United States. But just because you don't like him doesn't mean that he's below the protection of the law. No one's above the law and no one's beneath the law, in the sense that because Donald Trump is someone the establishment doesn't like, they break all the rules to try to bring him down and prosecute people around him. So all of these indictments are further proof that the Mueller investigation needs to be shut down. It doesn't mean that we stop prosecuting crimes of Paul Manafort, although I think there's a strong case for pardoning him once all of this is through, in the least, and others associated and caught up in these investigations, like General Flynn. I'm just saying that can be handled in the ordinary course by regular Justice Department prosecutors. The point of a special counsel was that the president might have been involved, so the Justice Department had the special counsel to have this air of independence, which of course is further, I mean, the Mueller investigation is a failure on so many fronts, because as Judicial Watch has found, the Mueller investigation is compromised as well, because they have an admitted well, not an admitted, we caught an anti-Trumper on his team. The number 2 official on the Mueller team is Andrew Weissman. We found he sent an email to anti-Trumper Sally Yates, acting Attorney General that Trump had to fire for refusing for obstructing the rule of law. And I think the email said, "I'm in awe of what you did." So you had this top attorney in the Justice Department sending an email to the outlaw Attorney General supporting her attack on the rule of law because it was anti-Trump. And he's the number 2 guy in the Mueller operation. Why hasn't he been thrown out? That's what I want to know. And we found 2 months ago, we looked at the registrations of the people who had been hired, 17 prosecutors. I guarantee you there's no other investigation that has as many prosecutors as the Mueller investigation. Not one of them is a Republican. We found 10 registered Democrats. The Daily Caller just reported this week they found another 3 registered Democrats, so there's 13 in total. But Judicial Watch broke this 2 months ago. Not one registered Republican on that staff. And I'm not saying you can't be a Democrat and be involved in a prosecution. But if you're looking to have a prosecution that the American people are supposed to think is free of bias, it's hard to make that case when your number two is an anti-Trumper. And that your FBI lead, Peter Strzok, had to get bounced out, and then you covered it up because he's an anti-Trumper and was pro-Hillary Clinton. So the Mueller investigation's come up dry thus far, and if there's any evidence out there, you betcha we would have heard it, of Trump collusion on Russia. It's compromised because of anti-Trump bias by its number two and its former FBI lead investigator. And then you got the problem Mueller himself, who allegedly is investigating, and the reason he was appointed was in part because of the leak by James Comey to the New York Times about his alleged conversations with President Trump. And Mueller, after Comey got fired, rightly so by President Trump, Mueller interviewed for the job, reportedly. So he's a witness in his own case. So I don't understand why there's a special counsel. I just think it's out of control. The Judicial Watch has several lawsuits trying to provide oversight as to what's been going on with the special counsel, its budget, about the activities of people like Weissman and the text messages were being opposed by this Justice Department. I thought it was very interesting, and I'm wondering why it is Rod Rosenstein announced these Russia indictments last week. I thought we had a special counsel do that. I don't know the exact reason why. I suspect it's because Mueller didn't want any part of the indictments publicly because they're such weak tea. I mean, the Russians have had severe, significant active measure campaigns against the United States over the decades. I'm not naive about that. I'm as anti-communist as the next guy. Well, not as the next guy, but probably more so than many of the establishment class. And I had no doubt the active measures didn't stop once the Soviet Union collapsed. But according to the indictment, and according to Rosenstein, this Facebook campaign was not successful in the sense it had no material impact on the election. And in many ways, the indictment was misleading because it suggests that it was focused on helping Trump. It leaves out or misleads you as to when the money was spent and how much money was spent, because a good part of the money, Facebook later confirmed, had nothing to do with the Trump campaign and was spent long before he won the primary. So for all the indictments, all the plea deals, you're seeing the case for ending the investigation and clearing Trump is strong. And I think we need to demand it. I've wanted to shut Mueller down. No one wants to listen on that. So be it. At least can we demand that he clear Trump and stop with this investigation that obviously is distracting and unfairly burdening the President of the United States, an investigation that fundamentally is based on a fake dossier created in league with Russian intelligence by the Clinton and DNC and laundered improperly into the FBI and Justice Department with the knowledge, it looks like, of President Obama now, Vice President Biden, Sally Yates, and Susan Rice and the rest to target President Trump. Now there's an investigation worth having. That abuse of power, those abuses to try to save the election for Hillary Clinton by targeting Trump and then trying to destroy him after he won.